Welcome back to another Crypto Over Coffee with Crypto World. Today we are excited to bring in Mike Saigh from Rarity Exchange. Welcome in this morning, Mike. How you doing?
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
So I have to say, with everything that's been going on right now, with FTX and all these imaginary tokens that were supposed to collateralize things, that this couldn't be a more relevant time to talk about tokenizing real world assets and bringing something meaningful that you can look back to something of value and make it fungible. Now, for those, before we get into Liquid Rarity Exchange, which I'm super excited to talk about, for those who don't know who you are, maybe give them a quick background on who you are and how you came to be in this space, so that way you can tell us the evolution of how you came in to create Liquid Rarity
Sure.
Exchange.
And I have that on the slide here. But I'll go a little forward and talk about that. And I'd like to start off with everyone has a passion collectible. And I just like to see what, your audience really, visions their passion in terms of collectible, their asset. And is it art? Is it classic cars, fine wines? What is that? So that's really a question that you have to ask yourself. And I have my own, and we'll kind of go over what mine is, and that's that. It's Edison's. I've collected this since I was probably in my teens, and these Edisons are really haven't grown in value that much, which is surprising. But when compared to classic cars and fine art and other collectibles, it really has been very modest. But I find it beautiful, and in terms of myself and my own personal aptitude, and what I love about this is it's so beautiful. You have this particular model has been that I have, and I have about 20, 30 of them, was built in 1888. The Edison cylinder, is probably about 2.5 minutes to 4 minutes long. That's it, with artists dating back to that time period. And you crank it up and you let it go, and you use another cylinder. The reason why this hasn't grown in value, I don't know, and I don't care. I really don't, because it's something I love. And that's what a passion investment really is. LRE is totally the opposite. It is looking at return on investment strictly. So it wouldn't invest in Edison photographs unless it shot up somehow. And that we'll get into that later. But it would be something that has a known value of return over the last 30, 40 years that have exceeded the S&P. Some of the things that have really grown in value is fine art, Stradivarius violins, baseball memorabilia, classic cars, the Mickey Mantle card, and that's a picture of it, in 1952 was just sold for $12.5 million. $12.5 million.
Yeah.
So you have these collectibles with incredible opportunity to really compensate for the speculation. And that's your initial question, the speculation of the crypto marketplace right now with FTX and what is his name? His name is Sam
Bankman-Fried. Yeah.
Fried. And
Yep.
so, which is $2 billion is accounted for. There's a loss of 32 billion regarding that.
Yeah. $8 billion in the hole.
Right. A little
Yeah.
a little bit of money there. Right.
A
So,
little.
we're talking about, I'll give you a little bit about my background first. I was involved in a digital venture myself. And back in the 80s, I developed a clean room in a basement in Webster Groves. I know the exact address. I still remember it very well every day for years. So I would teach during the day at UMSL. I'm a stockbroker and a financial manager, did that as well. And at night, I worked on the first electronic book in history. And it was different than what was out there back then. You're talking about the Franklin Bible was the only thing made which was static. It had a Bible on it. But the idea here is really downloading with copyright protection every type of IP, which is known today as, of course, iTunes. But this is a picture of my engineer using the system and the reader. But it really was capable of listening to words, listening to music, and it used 4 16-bit processors back then. We had to use that in tandem. So one would scroll and paginate, one would search, one would do other functions in tandem, and it was quite a feat. So it took 3 or 4 years. Several patents were filed, and I'll show you another photograph of it. And this is kind of similar to what you guys are doing. We developed an ATM type machine, and here's the reason we did. The speed, there was only back then, I'm talking about 3,000 internet users, providers, and
Wow.
mostly universities and military. Pretty much that was it. So the universities is something I chose as a result. I wanted to download textbooks, and I would have an average. There were average textbook content portfolio in a bookstore would be probably about 3,000 to 4,000, 5,000 books. And we developed, and since there wasn't, the speed back then was extremely slow. You would probably take an entire evening to download a textbook. And so there was the kiosk served an incredible purpose. Number one, I was inundated, and the reason I got involved in this, I was inundated with publisher content, various books I had to adapt to classes. So it was the dawning of the analog and digital world. And I happened to be right in the middle of it, and which was a fascinating time. What this kiosk provided me is a way in which I can increase the speeds, be able to integrate it with the bookstore, ISBN, and be able to download the books on a solid state device, be able to search the books they need for a semester, and be able to put that on a page type of display reader, which you see here. That was my early drawing that you see on the right-hand corner. And we had to develop screen technology. We developed software. We developed the network. We actually went to publishers, Simon Schuster, Prentice Hall, Houghton Mifflin, John Wiley, you name it. And we put most of the content into this kiosk, and which, with the exception that we can download updates. We can update a book electronically from afar. And so this was introduced to the market after several years. I first went to New York and introduced it to about 500, various locations, publishers and Follett's and Barnes and Noble and Borders at that time. And so you had the used book industry that was very interested in this too. And sure enough, almost like how we started this podcast, the technology didn't work. It died on me. So I had to show slides, which delayed things. About a year later, and that was probably 1988. 1987. A year later, 2 years later, I went to the NAC show, National Association of College Stores, and to show this. And we actually had the first copyright protected downloading process in the world. We had various products by then, 1990, 1991, some of which you see. And it was like we were from outer space. No
I
one's ever
bet.
heard of that. No one heard of it. No one has, and it took many, many years to accept. The patents also included video on demand. It included music. It included digital music. It included gaming, and that's a whole new subject that we developed for gaming and video gaming, which I'll show you pretty soon. And it was quite fascinating. So I'm gonna, if you're all right with this, I can show you a little film of how we thought and kind of came up with the fractionalization of rarities. And before we
Yeah.
start, I was a collector of art, and I've said of music boxes, and there, at being a broker, I kind of put two and two together back in the probably 2005. I started working on this and patenting it. I filed a patent in 2006, and that was the first patent ever with no prior art for digital assets being fractionalized. And so it wasn't a very difficult leap for me from what I did before to this. And one thing caught my attention. There was a broker in New York that, and when the market collapsed, I believe that was the .com fiasco, if you recall, what, 99? Is that right? Something like that. People just like Madoff, just like FTX, they wanted their money. When times go bad, they really are looking to redeem. And so he took tens of millions of dollars, this one broker, and they found out about him. And so, and this is kind of gave me the motivation, as well as it was a catalyst to really thinking about this. He was caught, and he had to liquidate. He bought a lot of rarities. He bought classic cars. He had very good taste. He bought classic cars. He bought fine art. He had statues. He bought, instead of putting it into the stocks, he put it into rarities. And when the market collapsed that year, they looked in his warehouses and his homes and all that stuff, and found out that the rarities were worth about 3 times what the market value was. He actually made money when they liquidated his personal property. It's a fascinating story, but that kind of gave me, okay, how do you regulate this? It's just not going to, we're not going to throw something in an eBay and let it, without being vetted. How do you regulate that? How do you have, right now, these high valued assets are enjoyed as a great investment by high net worth individuals, but how do you get the other 99% involved? How do you get that? It's through fractionalized ownership, getting them
Well,
involved.
on
And
that
being
note,
able
Mike,
to,
real quick
yeah,
before you start the video, I would actually love to ask that question specifically, because I feel like by the time we get to the end of this, it might get lost. What I saw in your story was a bit of a slog. Like, you were working for years and years ahead of your time, trying to get people to understand something that probably they didn't really fully understand for 15 years. And the first question I'm going to ask is kind of what drove you to keep doing that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, to where you got to the other side of that? Because now it's like this cliff note, like, yeah, it's obvious, right? But it wasn't obvious then.
no,
I
it
mean,
wasn't.
for a long
It
time.
wasn't obvious, and it was I had I had the bookstore signed up from the Ivy League to Miami-Dade to DePaul University, etc. I had 10 very strong schools signed up, ready to go. But you have to have, you're not going to carry a electronic tablet device unless you have all the books, right? You're not going to put money into buying this device without all the books there. You're not going to carry this and carry 3 books, right? So it had to be 100%. That was the hard part. I had to go and I had to get publishers to, and I'll show you that later. But I had to get publishers to how do I get back here? There we go. I had to get publishers to really accept this, and every single publisher that I mentioned turned me down.
Sure they did.
And until it became obvious for them, which is the end of close to 2000. So it took years. And the persistence was there. I knew it's going to happen. I knew they told me that no one's going to read electronically. Seriously, they said that. They defined themselves as book publishers instead of information and knowledge publishers. So they didn't have the right definition in the first place, and that was their own limitation. Am I a transportation company or am I a train, for example? So a lot of them are out of business. They didn't adapt to this, and thousands are gone because they didn't. It was almost the mentality of Blockbuster, which came to me several times when it was too late, by the way, for video on demand, and after 2000. But we also developed strong relationships with technology companies. Eventually, these patents and the prototypes and everything was bought by Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, his company called Vulcan. And they made a lot more money than I did on it. So eventually it happened. And that's what I think the audience really has to understand. If you believe in something, you go for it. And don't let anyone detour you. If you believe in it, you just have to have that grit, if you will, to make sure that you sometimes don't listen to conventional wisdom, which is not wise most of the time.
Well, and to that point, I mean, that's incredibly relevant. And I can, not to derail, because I'm sure it'll circle around to this, maybe to key it up for you to kind of hit this one to the green. I imagine with what you're doing right now, it's much the same thing, where you're looking at something that is so blatantly obvious if you get it, to tokenize a rarity, to tokenize a collectible, to make it where it's accessible, fungible, and it seems so apparent. But with what's happened with FTX, I wonder if you might have to be in for a couple-year slog again, just because of the overall narrative. It goes away from what the technology can do and how empowering it can be towards this whole other narrative. And so in that way, I hope that this isn't a repeat where it's like 12 years later it finally hits. But
well,
at least we know that you're in for the ride.
So I think we're. I believe. I'm not going to wait, for another 12. But let me address that, because that's an important point. Is the market ready? I say it is. I say I'm thinking that there's a real war going on. That in terms of the war to get digital twins, looking at real value versus speculation, which is happening all over right now in crypto. Crypto is down, 50-60%. Inflation, and you have the versus monetary restriction. You have that. You have a situation which I think is the biggest war of all. And I don't know if the audience or you can guess at what that is, what I think. In my mind, the biggest war is the P2P decentralized type of network and system platforms compared to centralized. That's the biggest war.
Yes, that is the
And
biggest war.
so how can and we have 6 or 7 patents, several issued, including NFTs, including the physical assets, digital assets, the protection of digital assets, and understanding how to detect fraudulent activity, how to vet, how to really do all the things from start to finish. But how do you how do you really um, uh, have a big launch, especially when the
Yeah.
SEC is coming down on everyone's back? They're after these cryptocurrencies. There's going to be regulations which prevent what's going on right now to protect
Yeah.
the investor, and we're part of the solution. Each one of these funds, each one of these rarities that we list are thoroughly vetted. They're going to be SEC approved and regulated, and we want that. We
Yeah.
insist on that, and that wasn't even heard of or possible before all this mess. Really, I mean, it really helped us spark interest with the SEC. My partner is an SEC attorney, a well-known one for about 25, 30 years. It has really, the tide has turned to do something of real value. And Rarities is almost the gold standard. It will be. The gold standard, as you know, it was 1944 it started, and I'm probably giving you more information than the audience wants to hear. But Brampton
Woods
Wood,
Agreement.
yeah, the Brampton Wood in 1944. It was changed in what I think it was August 15th, 1971, by Nixon to get off the gold standard, and that caused a lot of the inflationary issues that are happening right now. We bring that back in a very small way. Rarities becomes the backing for tokenization.
Well, and to that point, the moment that you back the Web3 and you actually have securities that, let's say the gold standard, if you will, then you can no longer do what FTX did, where you just basically leverage a bunch of imaginary, tokens of imaginary value to make other trades at high risk to create, for other tokens of imaginary value. At some point in time, you lock in, there has to be a foundation for everything else to be built upon. So it can't just spiral out into like a repeat of what happened in 2008.
That's right.
And for me, I think the most beautiful thing out of all of this is that, for one, well, I guess two things. One is that we're here now still having this conversation, talking about where do we go from here next. And two, as we do that, we're moving forward with a system that is more like the system that Bitcoin was trying to create, where you actually have something of real value and we're letting it all die. Like all of the things that are like the FTX and Three Arrows Capital and Terra Luna, like we're in this unregulated market, or less regulated market, I should say, but there isn't any bailouts. So each time that there isn't a bailout, everything just gets tanked, it gets wiped clean, it's painful for everybody involved, but then here we are talking about, okay, well, what do we do next? Like this was meant for us to escape the orbit of what happened whenever we uncoupled ourselves from gold and just created all these artificial monetary systems. So to that end, securitizing something like Liquid Rarity Exchange, I think is among the first wave of things that have to happen if we're going to make sure that we can maintain this vision at all. So to that end, I would really love for you to show that video, so that way people who are maybe perhaps less familiar with some of these concepts might be able to dip their toes in.
Will do.
If you are starting to price in a slowdown or a potential recession, this growth scare that you talk about.
A paradigm shift in markets that is making everyone, including JP Morgan, panic.
As the recent sell-off continues,
cryptocurrencies continue to face numerous headwinds.
Investors are looking for safe havens and people are watching their 401ks tumble.
With the sentiment of the current financial markets, it seems there is no safe haven. But is that really the case? There is now a way to invest in rarities and use them as a hedge against inflation, stagflation, and potential recession. Own a fraction of an art masterpiece, a Stradivarius violin, or a high-end collectible sports car, all while we focus on helping users to buy fractional interests in rarities through our patented platforms. We help democratize rarity investments to make them available to the masses rather than just the super wealthy.
Any questions regarding that before we continue?
Yeah, well, so for people who aren't familiar with what you can do with the blockchain, let's say that they were walking in off the street, they're barely understanding Bitcoin, if at all, and they come in and say, hey, look, I'm scared, my money's losing value, crypto seems volatile, but I do want to have something that seems outside of the system. I guess I think I understand what you're talking about with collectibles. I like to collect things, and I understand how those collectibles have gone up in value. I've seen things like Masterworks and things like that, and I understand how art goes up. I understand how, 1941 Porsche or whatever, how it's going to go up. Like I understand these things, but I don't really understand how that has to do with crypto. Maybe if you might just kind of give a quick summarization for someone who doesn't know anything about crypto, how you can actually take something of value that's millions of dollars and allow them to have a little piece of it.
Sure. Well, you can do it in several ways. You can do the Masterworks model, which was the first patent filed in 2006. I won't get into what our actions are going to be, but in terms of NFTs and crypto, NFTs is a perfect vehicle for what we're doing. If you, based on what's happening right now with NFTs, which is, of course, it's based on blockchains technology and tokenization and everything such. But what's happening right now is you have a piece of art, whether it's digital or physical, and you sell those images on an NFT platform, and you list those, and people have the opportunity to buy those images and be able to sell it on the secondary market. Well, that's fine and good, and it's a start. I think it's a real start. However, it's not good enough. What we envision is both physical assets and being vetted. It will be captured in 3D. It will go into the metaverse, which we'll show you later in this presentation. And you're able to have that live feed where it's located, the historical reference completely in terms of the ownership, the title, the authenticity of this, the valuation, and it goes from an appraisal-driven value to a market-driven value. That's really a very unique process. Let me give you an example. So you have a person that has, and we've had, by the way, we've had probably $1.5 billion to $2 billion worth of people coming to us, owners of assets, and they don't want to go to an auction house. Because they take so much. And they realize that we have the intellectual property for this, and we have the platform and system and in place. But let's just say, and one gentleman who he was in his 90s, I'll give you one example of many, but he was in his 90s. He had the largest Hebrew book collection, antiquity collection in the world. He was in his 90s, and he wanted to keep it in his trust. He wanted to keep it as one pool. and he called us talking about keeping that in one pool and be able to fractionalize it. And you could do that. You can pull this, you can raise the money to do this on a Reg A plus, and be able to take that pool and fractionalize it and look at it in holistically, the entire collection instead of selling it off. Well, his kids wanted to sell it all off. They wanted to sell it individually. And he didn't want to. So there was a war between their aptitudes and attitudes in terms of what should be held in the family. But that's not always the case. Let me tell you why, and this is patented as well. It doesn't have to be a person with an asset, a Stradivarius, for example, and we're working with about 14 Stradivariuses around the world to be a part of LRE. But the idea of selling the Stradivarius with an owner, and they don't want to give the entire Stradivarius up in terms of ownership because they hold that very dear. And so they can sell, they can actually say, okay, we're going to sell 15% of that Stradivarius to the public. And just so we know it's in a safe location, we know where it is. It's in a vault in London. It's in a museum, for example. And we have to know that and we also have another company that tags it and marks it even during transportation. It's all insured with our system as well, 100% insured. And so they can they can retain 85%, and 15% goes to the public. That way you don't have these big expenditures to purchase in the first place. Let's take a museum piece, Picasso, let's say. The Picasso can stay, and the rights to the display of that Picasso remains at the museum level. This is again patented, and now it's fractionalized to the public. Doesn't have to move; it stays right there, and that's a wonderful application example. So you can go to history museums, you can go to art museums, which are, by the way, they're cash poor and asset rich. They need cash, and this is the way to do it. But also think about the repercussions. That those fractional share owners now will go to the museums. It will draw a feeling of ownership going to the St. Louis Museum, for example, art museum. So you're able to create a larger market. You're able to keep the display, and you're able to fractionalize. Now, the fractional owners of this can also go to the secondary market and sell it. So it's liquid, and that's why it has to be regulated. So that's hopefully that explains a little about your question. There's so many different things we can exemplify. The Titanic actually called us when they found the Titanic artifacts to do the same thing. They didn't want a billionaire owning this and putting it in a place that the billionaire's house could be burnt and destroyed.
Yeah.
So they wanted to, and so when you sell it to the public, that becomes safeguarded, and we're going to make sure it is.
Wow. So if I might try to super simplify, just for someone, kind of that little elevator bit for somebody who knows nothing about crypto. Like, imagine if you could walk into a museum, the Picasso on the wall, you own a piece of it, and if you ever want to sell a piece of it, there is a place for you to do it. And we know for sure that you own a piece of it because the blockchain is distributed, and it makes that safe, and it also makes it to where it's accessible. You can buy a piece, you can sell a piece, and it gives you a safer place to put your money than just letting it burn away through inflation. Would you say that that's okay? Perfect.
I think that's a very good example. This is and we'll get in some of the numbers and the indexes pretty soon in this presentation. But you'll see and we have a whole team doing this, developing indexes for every single subclassification of rarities and collectibles, every single one. And so we'll show you that later in the presentation. What I have up here is a letter I sent to my partner, who's Jeff Smith and Shara Zhang, regarding something I developed, and it was about video gaming. I had to learn that, and so I set up a warehouse type of place in which video gaming would be. I knew that's going to be an integral part of what we call the Genesaur project. LRE is the physical side is based on things already, rarities that are already produced and have value. Genesaur, our other division, is about creation of intellectual property, the creation of music, the creation of film and video and motion pictures and scripts and short films and animation and video on demand and as well as gaming. So we set up a social gaming platform, and we developed the software, and we developed on this little retail beta site just to see if it would work. And we did it in a temporary way. We did it just to see the kinks, and this is 2015. So let me show you what it looked like. There it is. This is the first video gaming, and this is why I'm so excited about talking to all of you, because I believe in retail. You can have a retail location that is very interactive, exciting.
Yeah.
We called it Code Red Live. This is real. We are making our staff, development staff, we made hot dogs for them there with mustard and ketchup and stuff. So this is interactive gaming for the first time in history that 4 players and everyone, there's 4 sections to it, could all interplay, and it'd be timed. And this is a long time ago. This is before you had the interactive games online that proliferated since then. But we learned a lot, and we did this on purpose so we can patent that and put that in our process. So we talked about the major war. We already got through that, and I believe that that's going to be resolved and that no side is really going to win. We feel whether it's peer-to-peer, decentralized, or centralized, there's going to be something that has to be centralized, called the SEC, for example, as a result of some of the issues that we're seeing today in crypto. We talked about, the FTX, $32 billion some investors lost since 2019. That's when they started. That's amazing. And $2 billion is gone unaccounted for. What crypto, you can tell me, is crypto about 50% off probably since last year?
Well, it depends on what you're comparing it to.
Sorry?
It depends on what you're comparing it to.
Yeah, that's right.
It could be
depends on what you're comparing it to, definitely.
Yeah, it's way down even more than that. If you're looking Bitcoin, I mean, gosh,
Yeah.
that's down 70, 80%. But at the same time, some of the altcoins especially, they went from having billions or hundreds of millions of dollars in value to basically being worthless. And it's not to say that those experiments weren't necessary, but man, hard hit for sure.
Absolutely. And rarities, given the fact that it's safeguarded, it's in a museum, for example, it's fractionalized, it's in a safe place. It very rarely, if you buy it right, of course, you have to. And that's why we have specialists, which we'll talk about a little later on. With every single type of rarity asset and subclassification of assets, we have specialists that have been in that field, have all the contacts globally, that really know how to buy this right. So the idea of Rarity asset classifications. Let me show you this. Of course, you have digital assets. I explained the GenesWork project as it relates to new IP and copyright creations through NFTs. We have a patent on that filed in 2015. We called it Rarity Trading Platform that was issued. We have the string instruments. We have specialists for that. His name is Vogel. Fine art, coins, wines, documents, timepieces, architectural buildings, sports memorabilia. Keep that in mind, the sports memorabilia before the hour's over. Entertainment memorabilia, publications, vehicles, military, and there's many, many more. So we're looking at problems that we had prior. It's liquidity. Obviously, when this started, liquidity, it was a terrible issue, and if it's unvetted, that makes it even worse. It wasn't fragmented. We were the first one that really utilized a way in which it's fragmented in a very controlled SEC secure way. Opacity is another issue. We want to make it totally transparent through blockchains and other methods that we developed. It's right now speculative, as we talked about. That's what's going on, a lot of it, and it's unregulated. We solved those issues. So what we're doing is not only fractionalizing rarities, but we create pools of rarities. We feel that that's a better way of going. You could diversify that way in each one of these categories. It's a utility that you can trade between these LRE types of subclassifications. And so you can, if you don't want one, you can go around and put your assets into another subclassification category. You have all of them. You have that secondary trading. You have bragging rights. This is a big one. So I own now a part of a Picasso, all right, hypothetically. I wish I did. But I own a part of a Picasso, and now I put it in my own metaverse. I can put it into my own living room with my own Van Goghs and be able to do that in the metaverse and be able to make that very interactive. And you'll see how that works in a little bit. So that metaverse marketplace becomes very dynamic. I see the goggles is not necessary when you're trading. Very uncomfortable. You can use it, and we will gear ourselves toward that as well. But there's other things we're developing that are much better than that. And I can't share that right now, but it's going to be an interesting world. GenesWork Creations, I think, is the new frontier. The collaboration, global collaboration, we have patents on this, in which you can hire the best. You can do that online. You can create music. You can create scripts, and all that becomes a very creative, even architecture. You can create engineering projects, but this is the new wave, we believe, GenesWork Creations for the next thing that we're heavily involved in. Here's our platform in graphic form. And what you see in the background are actual patents that we filed. So you have the Rarity vetting forensics, which we'll talk about, centralized trading. We have decentralized trading. We have new creations. We have all classifications of rarities. We have data mining, back-end, front-end servers. We have rarities in terms of fractional shares. That patent's issued. Metaverse, we were the first one to ever utilize the metaverse and digital twins for VR, AR, and RR. We call RR rarity, real rarity. So it locates where it is, and it also could be in a mobile environment. So Let's look at Genesaur RTP, which stands for Rarity Trading Platform Benefits. Obviously, this is a new asset class, and we take that very seriously, and with all the fiduciary responsibility that we have. And we're not, it's going to be something to be proud of, and we're going to make sure that everything's thoroughly vetted. So it's investment grade. These are not secondary B-class assets. They're the top of the line. They're vetted, and we have a large portfolio of global rarity specialists. They're appraisers, and for coins, they grade these coins. It's going to be in a three-dimensional type of configuration that with a high level of definition. So cars, you can have a car, a Ferrari, 1950 something Ferrari, and be able to have the real one in safeguarded in a car museum. But you could have that same car into the metaverse and be able to start the engine, if you will. You can drive it around later on. You can see it and all the dents and scratches, everything. You can open the hood with the motor. You can feel it. And so that's where we're going. And it's a smaller leap than a lot of the lofty plans out there. This is very doable. So we also address the global demands of rarity assets in view of volatility, which is awful right now. It's unstable. What's going to happen with inflation? It's going to continue. Are we continuing the printing of money? So what we're doing is creating these managerial tools which give third parties the opportunity to be a part of our platform and do that with certainty and confidence, building a brand for them. Let me give you another example, if I could, before we go to the next subject. Let's say you have the Stradivariuses on one side, and there's many good violin makers right now, tremendous, but they really can't get over the hump in terms of notoriety. So we can have famous artists playing those violins or guitars and be able to utilize the music, stemming from these new violins and increase the market value for new makers. And so, as you know, the low correlation to the equity market, and it's a hedge against inflation. Here's another film. This is a B2B metaverse in which we're building a metaverse building. This is just a representation for specialists, and I'll play it right now if that's okay with you. So what you saw before you go to the B2C metaverse, this is what you will have as an investor available to you after you buy a fractional share. So let's do that, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So we'll play this real fast. Sorry about the drilling. It's in my building.
Okay, you had me wondering. I was like, is that outside hours? Sorry.
Yeah, it's in my building. It's new construction. So sorry. So notice how you can look at the value and all the financial fundamentals, and as you point to everything. And you can actually have, if you have 20 cars, you can do the same thing collectively. That's a big one. And you can see where it's located and all the historical references to it. So let's talk about the addressable market. I'm going to give you a couple examples. We see the collectible market as close to $500 million today, and last year, and that is growing at an enormous pace. The other is cryptocurrency. That's really fallen off that probably number is not even correct anymore. At all. And then the metaverse market, which I like to talk about, address a little bit. When you're looking at the metaverse, about 20% of the world's economy is digital, about 20%. And if you're looking at intellectual property, it's over 50%, the intellectual property value. But if you're looking at, and I'm going to go to another slide, if you're looking at digital artwork, what we do is really look at we look at this from a historical standpoint. Here, for example, is classic art, contemporary art, and abstract art. And the digital artwork is you see it very consistent on the classic side. Contemporary is more beta there, and abstract's a little less, but higher beta than classic. So we're going to look at the beta. We're going to look at the volatility very closely as we choose these assets in various classifications. The music, for example, here's classical music. We're going into the electronic music, and I can't read this, I'll hide it. Modern music, and you see the fluctuations there and how they look at it when you look at it as a whole. So each one of these assets, we have done an enormous amount of work on in creating these indexes that for every single one. And when this becomes market driven, it's going to be that much better. I'll go back to this a little bit in the B2C metaverse. So you're able to put this on your wall, look at it on 3D glasses. You can create your own rooms from a metaverse standpoint. And I was trying to get out of the drilling a little bit in case you haven't seen it. Okay, so I think you probably saw that. So the idea of metaverse global metrics for the next 10 years, we did some calculations in which 10% of digital assets would equal in a metaverse about 3.65 trillion. That's in 10 years. That's if the annual GNP globally grows about 2 to 2.5% a year, which is questionable now. But if you take those same numbers and given digital economy is probably about 19 trillion, and 15% will be 5.45 trillion, 20% of digital assets will be in the metaverse will be worth 7.25 trillion. This enormous growth. Here's LRE, and we're positioned. We left out big companies, but we're kind of in the middle of NFT marketplaces. We have patents on that. The metaverse, we have patents on that. Digital gaming, we're very heavily, as you saw, involved in that. And we also have the physical side of things with fiat for shares of fine art. We also, and this is from one of our slides in the patent, we also look at high definition paintings and artwork and everything else very forensically. So when you put it in a digital format and you're selling it, we will have a copy of with incredible detail of everything. So you can't forge it, and forgery is a big thing. So we call it vetonization, and so each one of these things would be extremely entered forensically and logged on the blockchain. Our partners, and this is an important one. We partnered with a global investment bank called eToro Capital. And on the left, you see some of our patents, but eToro Capital's international banking investment bank. They're global, and they're very excited. They want to get into the metaverse, and so we partnered with them. We also have partnered with Sotheby's, Vogel Rare Violins, and Capital Advisor Network Group, and many others. We just didn't have room for that. As for universities, we did a study. I have taught. I was an instructor at Case Western University, the Graduate School of Engineering for Case Western. This is my third year coming up, and they have taken on this project from a video gaming standpoint, because I think that's the most difficult part of this, of any intellectual property, the latency issues, this asynchronous versus synchronous, and we also are working with St. Louis U and Washington U. Here we are, a little bit of our executive team. Jeffrey is a great guy. I've been working with him on this project since 2015. Shara Zhang is kind of our glue. She's a logistics expert, you know me, and Michael, and we just hired a new COO, which has phenomenal business experience with hundreds of millions of dollars. But it's a good team, and here's the rest of them. Nathan is now our CEO right there. We do this on a mobile environment, and these are our revenue streams in terms of exchange listings, annual management fees, metaverse monthly subscriptions. We'll license our patents. The data mine is a huge one for us, huge in the future, because once it's market driven, it changes the ballgame for Rarity assets. Some advertising revenue, even though we don't count on that, and of course secondary trading. Here's our development. We started with patents a long time ago, and we're now with a great team, about 12, 14 right now. We're going live on the Genesis project in 2025, but initially we're going to be working with eToro Capital with the metaverse, and also selling and trading assets. Here's an idea, and I want to kind of leave you with this. I'm very excited, and before we do that, I'm very excited about crypto world. I really am. I think crypto world could be the next Starbucks, but much more interesting. And we'll kind of leave this with you. How do you build that out? How can we help crypto world with Liquid Rarity Exchange? How can you really look at bricks and mortar with incredible opportunity and growth, instead of looking at a blockbuster type of situation? How can we do that collectively? And so here's this kind of I did this very quickly in terms of an idea that we can talk about, and how you merge the beauty of rarities, the trading aspects, ATM machines, and everything else as you go down the path. So that's it for now. So Any questions?
Oh gosh, Mike, a million questions. What I what I would say for those who have gone through this, I'd say the most meaningful question for somebody coming into this space for the first time, which is pretty much everyone, and for that matter, even if you're familiar with crypto, what you're doing with Rarity Exchange is still new. What would you want them to do with this information? Like they came across this video, however they came across it. They're enthralled by it. They're excited by the opportunity of being able to own a piece of something that they value and love. What do they do next?
Well, I think that's a wonderful question, and I think it depends on, again, going back to their passion and their expertise. I look at Rarities as something other than a financial manager. I think they're secondary in nature. I think that's where in Toro Capital, they kind of stay out of things, making sure that things are regulated and you register as an investor. However, the car mechanic, let's take the car mechanic, for example. He knows more about cars, or she knows more about cars than any investment banker, and all of us, including me. But you have these wonderful, this wonderful opportunity to combine your passion, your knowledge of a certain rarity with the investment now. And that goes for art, and that goes for watches, and that goes for all these. Engineering, you name it. Video gaming, movie scripts. You give me a subject, and you can add some dots to it. So the idea of having people looking at this with excitement, with something that they say, I can invest in this. I don't have to spend a lot. I don't have to spend 15 million on a Stradivarius. I can do this and own part of it and use it as a hedge. I can diversify my portfolio. I don't have to do all of it. No, I can diversify a part of my portfolio in this. And when they do that, they're going back to the gold standard. To look at our earlier conversation, they're going back. They're going back to that 1944 and the gold standard before this ridiculous spending of $31 trillion right now in debt. That's 97,000 per person we owe. That's unbelievable. And so you now have some independence. You now have a way in which you have a hedge. You have a passion that now becomes an investment. That's important. And I feel good about it. I feel good about the middle class and people that can't afford these objects going into this. And it doesn't preclude, I've had many wealthy, people with tons of money loving this too, because they can diversify and they can legitimize this and in a very streamlined way. So I look at this as something which is going to take off, just like the electronic book, just like video on demand, just like I'm going back to my 1980s and having fun again. This is fun, and it's exciting, and people of all ages and will enjoy these rarities as collectibles and as an investment that they feel, hey, I have bragging rights.
So that leads me to my second to last question. What kind of world do you think that this will create in the next 10 years? Like, just like you think about digitally interfacing with an iPad as opposed to having to flip the pages of a book, it wasn't just publishing that changed. Mm-hmm. What do you think this will do overall? Or I guess put another way, what do you hope it does?
Another good question. Going back to electronic book and video on demand, and my passion back then was, again, redefining what books are. it wasn't about the binding and printing and distribution and all the cost. It was about knowledge. It was about information. It was about improving education. It's about learning and motivating kids in K through 12 and college, motivating them. Having a problem, with the author helping solve it, having a personal way in which you can, interchange the chapters with McGraw-Hill and Prentice Hall and Houghton Mifflin, Simon Schuster and John Wiley. You can interchange the chapters to create this, my own ISBN as a teacher, and be able to do that so I can take the best of all that. But the publishers, of course, didn't buy into it. And I would say right now, and I'm going back and I'll get to your question, the publishers didn't get into that, and because they were afraid. And this is a new generation. This generation they're going to look at rarities as something of value that they can be proud of, that they're a part of, intrinsically a part of. They're immersed in this. They will be immersed, and they're going to have a tremendous, I believe, when this becomes an SEC type of legitimate investment. They're going to look at this as a brand new asset class, but also a fun one that they can get motivated to love because everyone again has their own passion. And I think that's very much in parallel to the electronic book many years ago. It's pretty much the same. I look at this as the future. It's going to happen, and we're going to be probably, I believe, the leaders in this entire marketplace.
Wow. Well, Mike, that actually makes me think of something that came across my mind describing,
Be
somebody
quiet
owned
up
a piece
there.
of the Picasso.
Sorry.
Right? Yeah. But you were mentioning about like the sense of pride of owning a piece of a Picasso. I almost would love to see a future where there's a second renaissance, where people feel that they can contribute to beautiful works of art that are 10 years old, 100 years old, 1,000 years old, thousands of years old. They feel like they're a part of it again, like they're living it in a way that no previous generation ever had the opportunity to. Not only do they feel the sense of ownership, but they can also take that and they can immerse themselves, their environments, their social situations. They can even build their own IP off of it or with it. And they feel connected to it because not only do they own it, but they contribute to it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's so needed right now because right now, this is my feeling. It feels to me like the general current is that we're getting less and less and less connected to the society that we're a part of. That we feel less and less connected to each other, even though we're connecting with each other all the time on social media nonstop. We don't feel as close to one another. We don't feel as close to our institutions. We don't feel as attached to the things that we own. And I think that it is by and large systemic. And I think something like this can help us to snap out of it and to take this new technology and leverage it in a way to create the kinds of societies that we want, which is what crypto is all about anyway. And having kids, and my eldest being 16, I would love to see her grow up in a world where she owns a piece of a Picasso, a Monet, a Rembrandt, etc. And whatever it is that she's into, and she can take that and do something beautiful, meaningful with it. And that's the kind of feelings that her and her peers are having, and not one of just kind of that it's our society is one that we live in, and their society is one that they live in. They're the ownership class, and we're the class that just gets to own nothing and be happy. Mm-hmm. And I think that Liquid Rarity Exchange and quite frankly the entire industry, I'm sure that will get kicked off because of this. I would like to believe that will help make a difference. Now,
right, and so well said, so well said. If I could just give you one example real fast. Have you heard of
Please.
Herbert and Dorothy Vogel? That story. It's a fascinating story. This is a postal worker that had a passion for art. And had a one-bedroom apartment in New York with cats running around. And he went to the artists, and he and his wife were postal workers. I mean, very ordinary, very little money to spend on these artists. But he followed what he considered talent in fine art and drawing and fine art and paintings. And he bought over a period of many years, decades, 5,000 pieces of art over his lifetime, he and his wife, on a postal worker's salary. That artwork, after he passed away, is worth $2 billion. $2 billion, wow. Because he has the eye. Can you imagine? He had a passion, but he also he gave it all away. It didn't go to any of his relatives. He gave it to the Modern Art Museum in New York, donated all about $2 million, and they didn't even have frames on it. They took it had semi trucks and semi trucks of creating these beautiful pieces of artwork to bring it there after he and his wife passed away. And so that's a story. That's a kind of an interesting story that I'll leave you all with. But I think this could be an excellent investment. It could be give you some financial wherewithal and independence. It could, and we're going to do it right. And I really enjoyed I'd love to know more about how ATMs and bricks and mortar, and we haven't gotten into that discussion, but we could next time, because I think there could be a lot of ways to integrate some of this.
Mike, this has been absolutely beautiful. Don't want to end this, but everything's got to end at some point. So
we're still on
now. Yes. So for someone, getting to the end of this video, should they follow you somewhere? Should they follow the project somewhere? How do they get updates? Like, where do they go to know, whenever the next launch is happening, and whenever they can be a part of it?
Well, I'll give you all that if that's okay, and that could be a way in which there are several ways, and we can give you that so you can socialize it, and if you could, and I'll be able to do that next time if that's okay. But they can always call me. I'll be fine answering.
Yes, you get 400 phone calls, and you ask for it.
I have to clear out my voicemail as my good friend on this call, DeWitt Fowler, says, clean out your voicemail. So I'll do that.
Well, I feel like I got to do the same now. It's reminding me. Well, Mike, it's been absolutely beautiful. Happy to have you come in and talk about Liquid Rarity Exchange. Very excited about this space. And for those of you, dealing with the FTX blues, the best is yet to come. So don't get disparaged. For everyone else, thanks for coming. Yeah, for sure. For all of you, thanks for coming to Crypto Over Coffee. We'll see you again.
Thank you. Thank you all.